What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Josh Button podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kristin Oja, and she is actually, I guess I should have asked you that, CEO, founder of Stat Wellness?
Yes, that's correct.
I nailed it. All right. So, functional medicine, we've all heard it. I've had a couple functional medicine practitioners on the podcast already. Kristin, why don't you give us a rundown of what it is, who you're serving, how you came into this space, and why we're here right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what is so unique about STAT and the model that we created back in 2019 is that we blend functional medicine with strength training. So we're the first ones in the nation to build out a gym into a medical model. And we like to refer to it as modern healthcare. So as we kind of look at, my story from that lenses, it's not just functional medicine or root cause medicine or health coaching or dietitians. Like this is just modern healthcare. It's the way we think everybody should be treated. And we put a large emphasis on movement because we've learned over the years and the research shows this, the more muscle mass we have on our body, the healthier we are, the longer we live, right? And sarcopenia is a massive issue in the United States, starting at 30 years old. And we start to think of this muscle wasting when we turn 60, 70, 80. And for any listeners that are out there, it's starting at 30 years old. So it's really what we do in our teens, in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 40s that dictate our longevity into our 60s and 70s and 80s. But to make a long story short, I started my career as a personal trainer and I loved it. I loved cheering people on, being an encourager, a motivator. And my parents wanted me to go to school, get a degree. So I went nursing to fall back on it. And I ended up getting my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate, trying to seek how I thought healthcare should be done. I realized the more school I went to, the better I became at sick care. I was able to see a patient, I was able to diagnose them, and I was able to pair a medication. And I was like, my mind doesn't work that way. I want to be able to take time with you. I want to hear about your lifestyle. I want to talk about things that are going to make a difference over time, not just diagnose you and find the right medication. And so it was my frustration with our sick care model that really is fantastic when you need it, right? It really is. But so many people need the preventative, the proactive approach. They need to do some of the foundational work and have the goal be getting off meds versus just trying to diagnose and treat. And so that's what had me start Stat Wellness in 2019 is my background in personal training, the importance of muscle. Let's put barbells in every one of our locations. Let's have consult rooms. Let's bring in physical therapy, health coaches, dietitians, because I want to see you. I want to see you coming in on a regular basis. I want to see you put the work in. I want to help you understand how your body works, how to move better and feel better. And that was 2019. And here we are. We're about to open our 8th location this year. We have about 70 employees and we have 10,000 patients. And we're not stopping. We're going to continue to grow.
Awesome. So, is this a membership kind of model? Or?
So we do both. So there's a lot of different areas of medicine right now. You've got concierge medicine, you have what's called a DPC or a direct primary care model. We started as a membership and an a-la-carte practice. And the reason is not everybody is ready for a monthly subscription and a membership. They might just want to come in twice a year and learn how their body works, do deeper labs. They're already in a really good gym routine. They have a health coach. Maybe they don't need one. So we offer both membership and a-la-carte. And I think one of our unique variables in the functional medicine space too is since day one, we have been so transparent with our pricing. So any listeners right now, you can go on our website under pricing. You can see our a-la-carte pricing. You can see our membership pricing. We don't try to hide any of it. And I feel like in the functional medicine space, sometimes you have to call, okay, so well, what's a new patient? What's a follow-up? How many times do I need to come in? Right. So we offer both membership and a-la-carte. And we looked at for our medicine membership, what do you pay for a gym? And how can we put in these services for $185 a month? So we do unlimited health coaching, unlimited dietitians, 5 functional medicine visits, 3 physical therapy appointments, monthly educational events, discounts if you need supplements, all for $185 a month. And then you can tack on unlimited fitness on top of that if you live close enough to utilize our strength training. So we tried to make it approachable in our model so that we can scale and really tailor to the top, 40 to 50% of the US versus functional medicine, as great as it is. A lot of the financial models are really catering to the top 5% of the US.
So, are you covered by most insurance?
So only labs, unfortunately. We're really
Hmm.
trying to. We keep talking with insurances and figuring out how to make it work with the longer appointments, being able to spend an hour and, making sure we document all the appropriate things to get insurance coverage. So we do labs through insurance and we take HSAs and FSAs. But the place where we've been able to be more approachable is by doing that 185 a month and kind of giving you the functional medicine, the health coaching, the dietitian, all of that in that 185 a month.
Okay, so I mean, one of my first questions was whether or not you consider yourself part of mainstream healthcare, and I'm guessing you'd say no.
So it's kind of a yes and no. We want to be, when people think healthcare and they think of modern healthcare, we want to be your solution. So we want to be thought of as mainstream. Like we want anything that you need. You have a sinus infection. I want you to want to call us. How can I naturally manage a sinus infection? If it doesn't work, then I'm ready for the antibiotic, right? Like we want to be your mainstream modern healthcare solution. We're just not there yet in medicine. So I'd say we'd love to be. We'd love to be your solution for everything. But I think there's a lot of communication, storytelling that needs to happen. So right now, we're really for the person that is kind of health literate because they know there may be a different way of doing this. And then they seek us out and they find us versus being like the mainstream solution, if that makes sense.
All right, so first, I consider myself health literate
Yes.
by a wide, wide margin. And I couldn't help but notice on some of your posts that you use language that would align with my belief system, which is as far from the mainstream as you could possibly imagine. And I really want to know, where do you fall on the spectrum of terrain versus germ?
Terrain versus germ.
Yeah, so the germ theory versus terrain theory. I noticed language on some of your posts about the terrain. And of course, what we're putting into our body is going to play a factor in our health outcomes. It's going to play a
Yes.
factor in what we're observing on the day to day. So, have you entertained terrain theory
So I
completely?
have not explored the terrain theory as I think you're referring to it, but I have a
Hmm.
feeling when you describe the terrain theory, that is how we operate. So one of our biggest things that we talk about, my whole dissertation was on the gut microbiome and how beneficial germs are, how beneficial getting outside barefoot is. Is that the direction you're going with the terrain theory?
Yeah, the pleomorphic cycle is obviously a role, and obviously we are all covered in bacteria, and
Yes.
bacteria is everywhere. Pathogens, whether or not they are responsible for our sickness or whether or not they are a result of the terrain being dirtied, so to speak, polluted. And we all know that you can't really live in today's world in this environment without those pollutants, without those outside forces at play. So there are a large group of people that are leaning towards the terrain matters far more than the pathogen or the bacteria or any of the other things that we've been blaming
Yes.
for the last 100 years.
Well, and it's about a balance, right? The stronger your good organisms and your healthy pathogens are, the more they can suppress those potentially disease causing organisms. And this is what we found. And I'd like to say, too, I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year old, and they are daycare children from 3 months old. And my children have never been on an antibiotic. And people ask me this all the time like, how do you have two children that are 5 and 4 years old that have never been on an antibiotic? And I think part of this is the way we encourage germs and we encouraged outdoor play and not being sterile. And that was really challenging in 2020 with the pandemic, where sanitizer is everywhere, right? Lysol is everywhere. People are trying to kill germs everywhere. And I'm sitting here like, no, I want my kids to, I don't need them to wash their hands 18 times a day. I need them to be outside barefoot, running around, getting in the dirt, gardening with me. There's certain organisms that we know when you garden that actually help improve gut diversity from our fingernails, right? So there's so much research when it comes to the gut microbiome. I personally, and maybe you've seen a lot more of this research, have seen some, but less when it comes to like our skin microbiome. Our mouth microbiome is exploding right now in research, that oral microbiome, the vaginal microbiome. We're getting more and more research, but the thing I've found the most research on is in the gut microbiome and how that flora impacts our immune system, our serotonin production, our melatonin production, our gut lining, which then impacts our immunity as we look at it from a whole. And I can't believe I've made it this far without thinking about the terrain theory as you're describing it. But I feel like we're saying the same thing without that terminology. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about that all day. That is a big portion of what we do. And we do stool analysis. That's the main thing we do. We refer to dentists for oral swabs. We do the vaginal swabs, all of that. Because again, you're trying to boost the healthy. You're not just trying to suppress the potential pathogenic organism.
All right, so we're talking in this sense of what was completely normal for our grandparents.
Hmm.
In Atlanta, Georgia, both sets of my grandparents would have encouraged kids to play, to get dirty, to do things that now maybe some people are avoiding, like the plague, avoiding like COVID, avoiding like the germs, the boogeyman. So there's even research lately about Listerine killing the microbiome in the mouth
Yeah.
and it being extremely detrimental to both your oral health, your skin health, and all of these other things. And everything is layered upon what you mentioned before, the gut health.
Yes.
So yeah, we're saying the same thing. And I think there's definitely communities that are converging on these things together at the same time from different angles, different
Mhm.
viewpoints. Who are you working with first and foremost? Who is the number one client walking through your offices?
Can I describe it in two
Sure,
clients?
of course.
Because we have the healthy that want to be healthier, we have the optimizers, and we have the sick that are frustrated that want different approach to care. You fall in one of those buckets, and then within that comes more of like the optimization symptoms that are our top, right? So our top optimizing symptom is fatigue. We see a ton of fatigue and body recomposition in the healthy that want to become healthier. I'm just like a little tired. I feel like I shouldn't be this tired with how I live my life. I'm exercising, I eat well. I feel like I should be able to lose this 15 pounds. That's kind of like our healthy personnel that comes in. And then the sick is, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and they're sending me to a rheumatologist. And the rheumatologist is telling me my only option is a biologic for the rest of my life. And that there's going to be a point where that biologic's not going to work anymore. And then they're going to have to try a different biologic. And then that biologic's not going to work. And I'm going to have to have a different biologic. One, this is expensive. Two, I have to get labs. Three, the side effect profile. Have you read the side effects of these biologics? So I'm here. Is there anything else I can do? And, of course, for us, we look at, well, what caused the autoimmune in the first place? And it's normally not just one thing, or our job would be easy. It's usually multiple things that led to an autoimmune disease. But we start to peel back the onion and we start to do some root cause healing. And so it's kind of those two. And then within the sick is, of course, that I've been told I have high cholesterol. They want to put me on a statin. I don't want to take a statin. So here I am. Or I've got thyroid issues and they said the only option I have is Synthroid. I feel like there's probably some other way to manage this. So that sick bucket, there's a lot of, 10 kind of top conditions we treat, but we see both. So we have a lot of people that come in on paper, the absence of disease is not health. I love that quote. I didn't come up with it, but it's true. Maybe you don't have any disease markers, you don't have any diagnosis, you're not on any medication, but you're just not the healthiest version of yourself. We're going to dive deeper and we're going to optimize. So those are kind of our two populations that come in. And, we're trying to narrow in our story because it's hard. We're very unique people. We see all different ages. We work with kids that have ADD and ADHD, and we work with 90-year-olds that have Alzheimer's. As wide range as that feels, a lot of the functional medicine and a lot of our imbalances are actually pretty similar. We're having blood sugar issues, we're inflamed, we have gut microbiome issues, right? We lack connection. We lack human connection more than we've ever lacked human connection. So, as wide as our personnel is that we treat, or our kind of like ideal patient, it's pretty similar across the board. It doesn't need to be as complex. It's, once the person is doing all of these pillars, these wellness pillars really well, and then they're still not feeling better, that's when the complexity comes in. But most of our patients come in and they really don't understand how much sugar they're consuming on food labels, right? They do a body composition scan and they have 70% of the muscle mass they need on their body. Of course, you're going to be pre diabetic if you don't have muscle living in this world, right?
So yeah, I was going to say, so you're dealing with a large portion of the community, a large portion of the demographics, but like you said before, they are dealing with the same things.
Yeah, there's some like single massive issues. And if I talk a lot about these kind of key components to longevity, and I know it oversimplifies it, but the longer I've done functional medicine, I started doing functional medicine back in 2014. So it's been 12 years of functional medicine. I've seen so many trends, so many curves. I think it's hilarious when I even joke about it in our own industry, right? It's like when I first started, we were obsessed with probiotics. Then we were obsessed with prebiotics. Now we're obsessed with postbiotics. Now it's a symbiotic, right? It is. I mean, it's just where the research is. And the truth is, it's all beneficial, right? It's not that it's like this hot trend. It's like we need fiber, we need gut microbiome, all of these different things. But I think one of the biggest things I've identified is three things. If we can maintain muscle mass and build muscle mass, it's going to make a huge difference in longevity. if we can balance our blood sugar, if we're not spiking and dropping and spiking and dropping all day long, we're going to live longer. We're going to feel better. We're going to perform better. We're going to have less diseases. And if we can keep inflammation low, like if we can do those three things and focus on those three things, you're cutting out so much of the chronic disease in the United States, so much of the symptoms like the fatigue, the brain fog, the joints hurting, the poor recovery. So I kind of think about like as a basic kind of key to longevity is those three buckets when a patient walks in the door. How's your muscle mass? How's your blood sugar? How's your inflammation? Now, I know that's overly simplified, but when you work on those three things, you downstream affect so many other things.
So I've been through a lot of this on my own, and I think we agree on far more than we'll ever disagree on, but there are certain things, if I attack all of those areas myself and I go 100%, maybe even a little bit overboard, a little bit psychotic even, then I'm eliminating a lot of things that most people view as normal and will never eliminate. I know that if you're working with a large portion of the world, you could give them advice that they're all going to be like, oh, I can't do that. That's just too much. That's just too much. So are you playing a game, so to speak, of like setting healthy parameters in which you know that they might respond well to and kind of staying within the lanes? Yeah.
So, my favorite, I always like to enter this conversation with my favorite quote. It's little by little, little becomes a lot. And I think one of my goals when I work with patients is, what are one or two changes that's going to make the biggest transformation for you? Because nobody's going to do everything. And I'm not a black and white thinker. So like I come to everything with consistency versus perfection. And I joke with my patients now. I'm like, I live in a community where I see my patients when I go out. I'm still going to order what I want to order. And you can see me. Like it might be Friday night and I'm having a beer and a burger. There is nothing healthy about that burger and that beer. Like I acknowledge this isn't good for what I'm putting in my body. And maybe you could argue the iron and some of those nutrients. It's not a health food, a burger and a beer. But I ate really well during the week and I'm going out with my family and this is what Friday looks like. And I'm not ashamed of that because my mental health and my body requires balance. So I address that with my patients in the same way. There are seasons of a person's health where I'm like, hey, I know this sounds extreme, but I really think your life depends on making some of these changes right now. You are so inflamed and you are so incredibly sick that, like, your life depends on you cutting out sugar, cutting out alcohol, saying no and going to bed on time. You are fighting cancer, right? Like this is not a time for balance if we need to get to the next level of your health, right? And I'm not saying that those things, heal in isolation cancer. I don't want the listeners to think that way, but we need as effective and as healthy as an immune and inflammatory cascade as I can get right now in this season of life as we're taking a holistic approach to your care. So there are seasons I'm a bit stricter on, but I think the problem in the wellness industry to me right now is there's so much noise and there's a lot of fear. And I think that fear and that noise is like getting us paralyzed. I think it's also hindering what I believe to be one of the most important things in our health, which is our happiness. So if I'm ever making a recommendation that strips you of your happiness, we need to figure out what does balance look like, because you probably know this Harvard study that was done, a 100-year-old study on humankind. And what was the biggest indicator of longevity? It was happiness and connection. So, I always say, like, I hope I don't get judged if you see me having a beer out, like on a Friday night. I hope I don't. But if I do, like, I'm so balanced and I'm living in alignment and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's interesting, like dealing with radical action for a really good reason versus radical action for 2 weeks and then you're going to give it up and you're not really going to have any forward progress. You're just going to hit that wall or you're going to hit the point where you don't think it's worth it. So let's have an exercise. I've aimed this podcast at midlife grapplers, and for the most part, we're talking about guys that have normal everyday lives, have stress, have families, have bills, but still go and subject themselves to a couple hours per day or maybe 2 or 3 sessions per week of rigorous exercise and trying to keep up with kids. And maybe some of these guys will go to the extreme on one end of their life to support this action, just to support being able to have the social connection, to be able to exercise in this way, not necessarily to prove anything, but to still be capable. I, for one, have gone far over the deep end. And if you were dealing with somebody who walked into your office and was like, "Hey, me and your trainer, we get along great. I know exactly what to do there. But what else can you provide me that I'm not aware of? What
Mhm.
else can you offer that's going to allow me to do this with the psychopath kids, to be quite honest?"
So I love the biohacker, the optimizer, the person that's all bought in and they want to go at 110%. Like I love that population. To me, I think about this is where we get to talk about that cherry on top, right? You have your foundations in a really good spot. So the cherry on top to us is some of the fun things like getting into the hormone replacement therapy, getting into peptides, a lot of those things that can help with healing and recovery when you have the foundations in place. So, one thing, and this I know is very simple, but I don't think there's a data point by itself in isolation that allows me to see the picture of your health. So, I really love for this population a wearable of their choice, whichever one they like, whether it's a Whoop band, an Aura ring. I think there's a lot of good ones out there. But this personnel that you're describing, they are very in tune with their body and they're going to be able to identify with their objective data what impacts their health very quickly. So I love this like health literate. I can wear this ring. I can see the data. I can start to learn. In 2 weeks, I'm going to come back and see you. And I can probably already tell you a lot about my habits, right? That one glass of wine I had on Friday night with my wife, like, turns out it's not worth it to have one glass of wine. My deep sleep was altered, my recovery was altered, my HRV was down, my recovery was poorer. So, like, I don't drink anymore, right? At all. That's awesome. Alcohol is a toxin, right? It's going to negatively impact your health. So that person has now given that up. Now they're like, okay, well, what's the next thing? And they're like, my deep sleep's at 12%. I don't understand why my deep sleep's at 12%. I need to get that closer to 18 to 23%. I need to recover quicker. I need to do all this. Well, we've got some peptides that can help. You've got sometimes it's as easy as, oh, I didn't realize my magnesium was so low. I strength train like crazy. I need 800 milligrams of magnesium. Some of these big guys that strength train a lot, it's not uncommon to need 800 milligrams of magnesium to help with muscle recovery and sleep. So I think I really love the daily data because I think that's where you're going to notice a lot more trends. This is also the person that immediately I'm putting a continuous glucose monitor on because I want to see what's happening with their blood sugar. They're probably already eating well, but now we get to eat for blood sugar balance. And that's actually different. I think eating healthy and eating for blood sugar balance, there's two different ways of eating and our patients are different. So I'll give you like for me, I really can't eat carbs during my workday. I don't know if my cortisol's higher. I'm just like laser focused with my patients. I'm just like thinking through things. I'm running around a lot. But if I have a carb, like even a healthy carb like sweet potatoes, my blood sugar spikes way higher than I want it to. So my lunches on work days are like big salads with salmon and a lot of olive oil. And that keeps me really stable. That's not the same for every single person. The person you're describing to me, I'm like, let's go. Let's optimize. Let's pull in peptides. Let's make sure your hormones are not just normal. Let's make sure they're on the upper two thirds. Let's look at your objective data. Let's see what lifestyle things do make the biggest impact. And maybe what lifestyle things you think make a big impact. When we look at the data, it doesn't really tweak anything. Maybe you have a little bit more flexibility in that space than you thought you did. So we address all of it. But I think the most exciting space for that clientele is the peptide space. We're big proponents of it when done safely and correctly.
So I did the Whoop strap. I went through Whoop. All right, I'll give you a little bit of my background just so you know what you're dealing with. I went plant based. I
Yep.
did vegetarian before plant based. It wrecked me somewhat. I went the deep end opposite direction to carnivore. Carnivore did a lot of good things for me. What failed me as well when it came down to energy and to sustained energy, especially doing the kind of things that I'm doing now. And I found Ancestral, found balance, had the Whoop strap, watched all my numbers change dramatically with certain little tweaks, and realized like the numbers I was getting back off this after a few months were so good. I didn't want to wear the strap anymore. Even the strap was giving me a little thing, dermatitis on my wrist. And I was like, what do I need it for? One area that I haven't gone into is peptides for myself. And the
Mm,
reason that I haven't is because of the long-term studies and whether or not this is really going to be detrimental at any point in time versus beneficial in the short or even long term.
yep.
So I'm working on 50, thinking about these things again. And, I am pretty sure I will hit that day on the mat where I'm like, crap, age has caught up with me. That's the only thing that I could actually think would maybe push me into reconsidering.
Hmm.
What else do you tell these guys who are like me, who aren't going to peptides yet?
Hmm.
And who do kind of want to like maximize their sleep. They want to maximize their ability to put muscle on in their late 40s. What's the
Have you done full panels, like lab panels?
No, not in years, not in
Okay.
years.
And
I
sometimes
haven't
it's
even
not,
had insurance since I was 18.
yeah.
I haven't been to doctors in forever, so none
And
of it.
sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it's not. But I do think some of our really high performing men that, like on paper and even with their objective data, is really healthy. We'll see certain things like slightly low DHEA or
Mhm,
slightly low testosterone. And your adrenals, they sit on top of your kidneys, or how you manage stress. The person that's really into fitness, really into eating well, really high performer, constantly pushing to 110%, you can run into some slight adrenal issues pretty quickly, which is usually one of the biggest reasons we'll see sleep disturbances in the person that's similar to who you're describing, you, right? Is maybe some slight cortisol and melatonin imbalances. I'm sure you're already doing all of the things at bedtime, but one of our questions would be like, okay, let's walk through your nighttime routine. Are we looking at screens? Are we getting good? Like, are we dimming lights in our household? Is our room cool? Do we have, all of these things in place? Like, do we treat ourselves like big babies in routine? Some people are like, yes, I'm doing all of it. And some people are like, you caught the one thing that I'm just like not ready to give up, which is like scrolling on my phone or watching. It's like my time. There was a whole article that was done that was fantastic about sleep procrastination. And I know my husband struggles with this. It's like, it's finally the time for me. And now I just want to like do what I want to do. And I just want to watch this like show that's just lighthearted or whatever it may be. I think there are, when you talk with people, even the healthiest people, there's probably one or two things we could still tweak without doing anything but lifestyle recommendations, right? If it's an alignment. And again, I don't feel we have to strive for perfection, but some of our patients, they're like, if you could perfect me, what would you do? Are high achievers, right? If you could, then here, let's talk about it. Let's do it, right? So we would look at that. And then the reason I bring up blood work is because a lot of imbalances you don't feel. So, like slight magnesium deficiencies, slightly poor methylation, right? A homocysteine that's just a little bit high, B vitamins that are just a little bit low, protein. You may be eating a ton of protein, but we're like, why are you still at 6.7 in your labs? Maybe we have mild stomach acid issues because we have some mild vagus nerve issues. So I think the lab data helps us identify maybe somewhere we need to dig a little bit deeper that may or may not be a problem. But we do some basic lab work, just more comprehensive blood work. So if your testosterone's off, sometimes you can do some natural things to get that up, whether it's working on the adrenals and doing some ashwagandha, cycling on and off it for those really high performers. When I was marathon running, ashwagandha was really helpful because running for 2 hours is hard on your adrenals, right? So ashwagandha kind of helps with that balance. So I don't think it's black and white, but I would say we do a review of your lifestyle. Is there some ways we can tweak and optimize, kind of thinking of these pillars and including like, are you so healthy at the expense of not having happiness, or does being so healthy bring on happiness, right? And for some people, they're like, I am so happy when I'm on my routine and feeling good and performing at my best. Like that is my healthiest and happiest version of myself, right? That's amazing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to have a beer on Friday night, right? Because you're like living your healthiest, happiest version of you. So it's very individualized. And then we'd look at the sleep hygiene, we'd look at the recovery, we'd look at some of these other things. But then I would really encourage some blood work just so we can make sure your protein's good, your blood sugar's as good as it should be, your insulin's as good as it should be, your nutrients, your minerals are where they need to be. Because you, I'm sure, know this, Josh, but like our soil is not as nutritionally dense as it used to be. So even when we're eating well, we often still have some micronutrient deficiencies. Some people combat that with just like a really good plant-based multi. But I think you're like my ideal person to kind of like nitpick and pull apart because you're already doing so many things right. It's like, well, what is the next thing we can do to get to that next level? I am kind of curious, like in your nutrition journey, because you've tried a lot of different things. I was at one point vegan too, and my energy, I could eat my office size of food and like still feel hungry.
right.
So vegan didn't work for me. I tried carnivore as well, also did not work for me. I started having like really poor muscle recovery. I think women, we need a little bit more carbohydrates
Mhm.
for progesterone production and muscle building. But I'm interested in what ancestral eating to you looks like. Do you get berries? Do you get like some of the
I'm aligned with what you put on your site as far as seasonal eating. So, to be quite honest, I am fortunate. I'm very fortunate that my mother is the cooker. She loves to bake. She does a sourdough everything that's absolutely amazing. So, once I added that back in, my gut health, I noticed almost immediately. That I do seasonal berries, but I don't eat a ton of fruit. I do not eat veggies. I honestly like that was one of the probably the one of the only things I saw on your site that I'd be like, well, to me, I couldn't do 50% plant-based. There's no way I could do it. I've tried it. My gut health is different when I'm actually going, oh, I need some green in there, or I need this and that in there. And as soon as I eat carrots and sweet potatoes and potatoes, and as soon as I went back to that way of eating, it was almost like everything clicked. And
Mhm.
as far as the only way I can relate it to other people is I'm kind of fighting with kids that are 20 years old, and now I'm not as exhausted as I would have been before. I stay in there, stay in the pocket, stay in their training room for as long as they are, and sometimes more. And I'm getting 5 to 7 sessions a week doing this.
Mhm.
And all of the lifestyle stuff that we both know is probably beneficial, I'm already on top of.
Yes.
I'm on top of personally. So that is part of this podcast, part of the page. I just did a sleep deep dive myself, is to share with the other guys my age. Look, you cannot keep up with the kids if your lifestyle is a wreck, and then you're putting yourself through this. It's just not going to happen. As far as diet, yes, every person I think is a little bit individual, and you have to address different
Mhm.
underlying issues one by one for sure.
Well, and the sleep apnea piece, I feel like is so missed in the middle-aged man that has snoring. So, like, any listener out there that even has mild snoring, if you have a partner that's like, "Hey, you snore if you don't sleep in this exact position," do a sleep study because I cannot tell you how many times we've uncovered sleep apnea, and that's a big driver of blood pressure issues and cardiovascular disease. The other thing that's kind of an interesting layer that we're bringing in a lot more is genome testing for individuals like you when it comes to nutrition. Because I do think all of our gut microbiomes, all of our genetics, some people would argue blood type. I don't think I've seen that to translate into clinical practice. I'd love your thoughts on that. But I think there is uniqueness in nutrition and what makes us feel good. And I think our lysol also plays a big role in that. So the more muscle mass and the more you're strength training and pushing yourself, a lot of our patients need a lot more protein and a lot more animal products to feel good. Versus somebody that's very sedentary and we're working on just getting to 100% of your muscle mass, they don't probably need as much protein, right? But I am kind of curious too for you, when you eat more plants, like you said, I could never do 50% of my plate to be like a plant based. Is it digestive? And you might be like, Kristen, why are you asking me this on my podcast?
100%. No, 100% it was digestive across the board.
And so then sometimes with that, I'm curious, like, what does your gut flora look like? Is it certain like prebiotics in general? Like, is it all these like intense prebiotics that cause gas or bloating? Or,
I was 100% sure I had leaky gut at the end of my plant-based days, like full on. And I was like, I'm kind of getting to that point where this will become something serious. Like,
yes.
yeah. And I'm sure that you deal with a lot of people who, if they're autoimmune, it kind of maybe even started with something like that when they started to realize everything else started going south beyond
Well,
their.
and that's where I'm kind of curious, like the variables that play a role, because a lot of our patients that don't tolerate higher plants, and we do stool tests, there's gut microbiome imbalances, and so it's a little bit of like mild SIBO, that small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And so the more plants they eat, the more gas and bloated they get. And so I'm always curious, like, is it a gut microbiome issue? Is it a motility issue? Or are there people genetically that don't process plants as well? That do genetically do better with lower plants and higher animal products. And I am always looking at the research and I'm looking at the clinical stories that I'm hearing and it's so mixed. I'm still like I think the debate's out and so I don't know where you stand if it's genetics, gut microbiome, activity, lifestyle.
It has to be a combination, in my opinion. But also, what are your thoughts on glyphosate? What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on certain plant
Yeah.
toxins like the phytates and
That's huge. That's
yeah.
huge. But I think I would argue too, depending on where you get it. Do you source your meat from like local butchers? Do you know where it's sourced from and how, what the animal's getting fed?
I wish I did 100% of the time, but I think about it the same way you would say you have your beer on your burger on Friday night, is that as long as I know, I wouldn't say religious as dogmatic, but I am pretty strict with myself as to what I'm consuming compared to normal people, that when I need to eat a couple tacos at a Mexican restaurant with a family, I'm going to eat it. It's not
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think because that's where I look. I think, yes, there's certain produce that has a really high rate of glyphosates on it. You can, of course, look at the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 and try to at least make sure those you're buying organic to minimize the pesticides, herbicides. The glyphosate utilization is skyrocketed, and there is good research on that connection with cancer. And definitely when it comes to leaky gut, I mean, it's a toxin in our system. So I do think there's a lot of that. I still have patients that don't tolerate plants as well, even that buy all organic. And I hope that those 100% organic plants are not loaded in glyphosates. I'd like to believe that they're not. They probably still, soil, rain, downstream effects. Like, I mean, but I think I also see it with animal products now too, though, because the grains that they're being fed are filled with glyphosates to mass produce. So it's like, it is really hard because the tissue is going to hold on to some of those toxins because they're fat soluble. So I think unfortunately, we just need to be on both the animal product and the plant based, like as aware as what we're putting in our mouth as we can, buying organic, clean, knowing the farmers, sourcing locally as much as we can. But I see that like glyphosate and I see the toxin on both the animal products and the plants. But I mean, I think crops are going to have a lot. Wheat is like, I mean, you can go to Europe, you can talk to anybody in Europe and you can talk to anybody in the US that's like somewhat, aware of their health. Like grains are definitely a big area that's like such a red flag between the US and even European grains and the way we're treating them. And, it's a sad reality of living in the US right now, but so many more people are health literate like you are. And so many people are demanding differences that we're seeing it. We're seeing it coming to light, which is great.
So, as far as advice wise, what do you tell people the role of fermented foods is and traditionally processed?
I'm a big proponent of fermented foods. I make sourdough at home. So, like, I think being able to make your own sourdough and control the fermentation, a lot of sourdough you buy is like really not fermented that long. And so, I think if you're able to, making your own sourdough products, having your own starter, growing it, knowing the fermentation, cooking it when it's like at its peak, like letting or making your bread when it's at its peak. So, you get a lot of that fermentation. And I always do a 2-day fermentation. So, I get more of that breakdown of the gluten. So, I'm a big fermentation fan. I don't know if you're referring to some of these things, but a lot of our patients will start drinking kombucha and some of those things on the market for probiotics and fermentation. I would caution you to like look at the back and see like some of them are okay. Some of them are like 4 grams of sugar for a whole bottle. I don't think that's too bad. I mean, it's still sugar, but some of them are like 16 or 24 grams. So if you're choosing a fermented beverage that's 24 grams of sugar, I'm definitely not going to think the benefit is there for your gut flora in those commercially available fermented products. And the industry is not regulated well. So you can put whatever you want on a bottle that it's a billion or it's 2 billion, or I've seen people market things in millions. And I'm like, the consumer doesn't understand that that's like nothing, right? Because it's this big number in millions. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not even 2 billion
Yeah.
CFUs. Like that's doing nothing. So I think anything fermented, I used to make my own kombucha with the SCOBY. That was always super fun. But I think home fermentation is going to be the best, even if it's cucumbers, if it's pickles, if it's little, onions. Like we get the apple cider vinegar. You want to get one that has the mother in it. It should be cloudy at the bottom to keep it light protected, some of those things. So home fermentation is always going to be my preference. And then if you're buying a commercial fermentation product, probably not going to heal your gut through that, but definitely look at the sugar because I think they are very sneaky.
Yeah, my favorite thing at the farmer's market is kefir that I know they're making from raw milk, and which brings me to that. Are you a raw dairy like
Yeah, yeah, big fan. We don't have like a public stance at stat. Like you're not going to see us on social media like really advocating, but with our patients when we're talking, yes. I think like a lot of the stuff we need to just touch things less. Like I think that's at the end of the day what I talk about is like the more things are touched by humans, the more we're processing things, the worse it is for us. Let's just go back to the raw, true, organic form of everything.
do you find that like that's coming from a place of fear?
I don't think we don't lump ourselves into carnivore. We don't lump ourselves into vegan. We don't lump ourselves into like any black and white state. If you asked me on our social media, we'd be like, yeah, we're totally fine with raw milk as long as you know the source of where you're getting it from because it's touched by humans less, right? It's in its more pure form. I think like some of the more black and white thinking, it's not fear based, but we don't want to discourage if somebody feels better giving their child whole milk from Whole Foods. we don't want them to think that that's a bad thing, right? And that they can't come to stat because we only advocate for raw milk. We like to meet you where you're at, and we're not black and white. And we do think little changes are going to make a big difference. And we don't think everybody needs to kind of put themselves in these boxes. So we're going to be the least judgmental practice I hope that anybody ever comes into in a functional medicine space. Like, I hope no matter where you're at, that you feel supported, encouraged, and that you fit in within our practice, and that we're not going to lean too far in any direction. Our goal is to make you the best version of yourself by small, simple changes that work for you right now. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't think it's fear. I think it's just we don't want people to think that if they're not carnivore, they can't come to us. If they're not vegan, they can't come to us. If they're drinking regular whole milk from Whole Foods, they can't come to us, you know?
No, I appreciate that 100%. And obviously, I think that would be the most successful transition for most people is if more places were completely open like that. And then there's the people like me on the far end of the spectrum who are like, I've already done it all. I'm over here, way off of the deep end of what you would consider mainstream norms. And I'm never going back.
Yes.
But I'm not going to judge you either because I've been there. Most of my family members views this radically different than I do, and that's not going to change. I will still drop little hints here and there about what they're drinking at the moment or what they're consuming, but I can't be a jerk about it. And I'm not of the mindset that we're ever going to improve society by being dogmatic or insane with it. So I completely agree. But I was actually referring to more of a fear of like FDA or regulators or other
Mm.
health practitioners and doctors saying, well, how dare you be recommending raw dairy to, you know,
So I don't spend a lot of my time worried about regulation, which I probably should. My husband, he left corporate America and came on as our COO. And I'll make this really quick. I opened in 2019. He came on in 2022. And he asked me, like, once he started in the first 6 months of us working together, what did you do with legal contracts before I started? And I shouldn't probably say this on the podcast, but I laughed and I was like, I signed the dotted line. And he was like, did you read them? Did you consult attorneys? No, I didn't because I signed the dotted line. So I feel like I don't have enough time and I don't have a lot of bandwidth to worry about the what ifs. And I was with my mother in law the other day, and my mother in law said, you know what I really love about you? You don't spend time thinking about the potential risk. You stay in, like, when the risk is there, you address it. So I don't spend a lot of time. I probably should worry more. I do know certain things. Like, I feel, we're not going to have black and white stances when it comes to screening. We're not going to have black and white stances when it comes to vaccines, because I really think that's a conversation we need to have with our patients in the room. We need to talk about, like, what's going on with their gut microbiome, what's going on with their finances. So as functional as I am, I get really discouraged in the functional medicine space when, really large influencers come out and say screening is bad and going to cause cancer, because I'm
mhm.
like, you know what? It saved a lot of our patients doing a mammogram, and they caught their cancer early and they didn't have to do anything but a mastectomy. Are there better screening tools? Yeah, I would argue there are, but not everybody has access to ultrasounds and mammograms and blood tests and genetic testing. So I think you'll see we're not going to ever have black and white stances on those things. And it's less about regulation and more about the individual approaches with the person in the room with us.
See, for myself, I have that differences with many family members as well. It's like, look, dude, I'm not, I guess I'm so far beyond trusting the establishment, and I'll be honest about that, that I wouldn't walk through voluntarily offering them the voice into my head, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think there are more people like me, but there's still the vast majority of people who are like, no, I'm going to go get my prostate checkup. I'm going to go get this checkup. I'm going to go get a colonoscopy. I'm going to go do this and do that. And just these things that I kind of eliminated as possibilities or potentials for myself long ago. So once again, I walk through your doors and I say, look, this is the way I feel. This is what's true for me or what is important to me. Can we still work together? Do we have enough common ground?
Yes, and what I would say too is the person that's like you are very in tune with your body, right? You're taking time to, like, how do I feel? How you listen to your intuition when it comes to your health. You do different diets, you experiment, you know your body. Like, the last thing I would do as your clinician is tell you that something you know about your body is not true, right? And so I think that's like number one. Some listeners, they might not be as in tune with their body. They may not know when their blood pressure is high. It's a silent killer. You may know as soon as your blood pressure comes up 10 points, you can feel a slight shift in the pounding in your heart and the head. You can like, I feel like my blood pressure might be up. Just say, here, I'm going to check it. Okay, I'm normally 110 and it's 120, right? Like you may be that in tune. And we have a lot of patients that are. I actually have patients, I've never experienced this in my life, but I don't tell them their journey is untrue. I have patients that feel low back pain when they're under stress. They feel their adrenal glands pushing out cortisol. I think that is so beautiful. I've never felt that. I've never experienced it. I wish I was in tune with my body to do that. But like, I'm not going to tell them that's not true and you don't feel that your adrenals are making cortisol. They feel it and I believe their journey. They're in tune with their body. So when you have that conversation of like what is right for your body, what's not right for your body, do you need to do screening? Do you not? Is blood work important? Is it not? I would say, hey, number one, like how in tune with you are you with your body? Do you know when you're off balance? I have patients that wear the Whoop band for 3 months and then they're like, I already know. I sat up in the morning and I said, okay, what was my recovery and what was my deep sleep like last night? They play a game with themselves and then they look and they're like, I nailed it. Because what's most important is that you know your body, right? It's not a wearable telling you, it's not a screening test telling you, it's not a lab test telling you, right? It's you knowing your body. So the more you do that, the less you need anything at all. But there are some people that have zero clue. Like, I don't know how my energy is. I don't know how my sleep is. All I know is I'm trying to perform really well in the gym. And then I look at their labs and their adrenals are horrible. Their testosterone is shot, but you look at them in person and they look perfect, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, we've got to work on your adrenals and your testosterone because your energy could be better. Your mental clarity could be better. Your deep sleep could be better. So I think it comes down to me of how well do you know your own body? And then I'm going to come in and help you know your own body better if I feel that there's big gaps. And so I'm interested because you work with a lot of men or at least talk with a lot of men. So I have two kind of male patients that come in. I have the male patient that answers our what we call medical symptom questionnaire, and their score is like 4. So they like vote that they have like zero health concerns at all. They feel amazing. Their score is 4. I'm like, oh, this is my optimizer.
And
When I
they're a wreck.
talk with them, they have like diarrhea every single day. And I'm like, why did you score that as a 1? That should have been a 4. Like, you don't remember the last time you had solid stool. So, what is your thought on like men, like the men you've talked with? Like, is there these like subcategories that like they are just not as in tune with their body? Or tell me about this.
Absolutely. We got to have a train wreck, an absolute train wreck before we're going to acknowledge any of that stuff. And that I think that's part of the challenge of just being a man. And the reality is we do not feel most people want to know about our problems. They want to know what we're fixing, what is going right. It's like that old adage, you get into an elevator and you ask the guy next to you, something about the weather, and neither one of you care about the weather at all. But that's kind of where we operate most of the time. And when we have real issues, like for them to walk through the doors of your office, I think for still the most part it's a confession in itself, you
And
know?
it's funny when we first opened doors, everybody looked like me. Everybody was like a 30-year-old female. And now, after we've been in business 7 years, we're getting so many more male patients.
Mhm.
I think it seems like the environment around men's health has really changed in the past year or two, probably related to things like your podcast and awareness out there. But there's so many more coming in that are like, I really want to optimize my testosterone to help with making sure that I get the most out of my workouts. And it's not, by the way, when I bring this up, like multiple times I brought up, it's not just about taking testosterone, right? Like I think there's so many ways to naturally boost a male's testosterone. But we deal with a lot of menopause. And I think part of that is the sedentary man. It's the insulin resistance, it's the testosterone to estrogen shift. And so I think a lot of men are not acknowledging their mild depression, their lack of libido, their lack of body composition changes. Like they're just normalizing all of it and they just keep trying to go through the motions of life. And I'm like, I tell the modern day man, menopause is real. And there's a lot of small tweaks you can make. Men's physiology responds really well to lifestyle changes. So there's like a lot of encouragement. Like men are just they're built differently than females. Females, we always joke, are not just tiny men, right? But I think recognizing what is normal and what is not, what is optimal and what is not, don't settle. Like do an intentional checklist of your body every morning and don't settle for suboptimal. Like if you're hitting snooze 4 times or relying on caffeine or, not being able to lift as heavy as you have, don't settle for that. like take a deeper dive and understand what's going on in your health.
Yeah, that's my website is screaming from the mountaintops. Literally is lifestyle changes from the time you get up and getting up at the same time and going to sleep at the same time. And like I said, I did the sleep deep dive and there's tons of, like you said, natural ways to boost your testosterone and your hormone production across the board. I'm an ice bather. I'm a
Yes.
grounder. I'm a circadian rhythm sun. Like I put together all kinds of different deep dives on those subjects for people like myself, but who have not come to that awareness yet. And I do consider myself very fortunate. I fell into community that knew these things when I needed it, when I was responsive to it, when I was looking for it. And for all of those things to align, I think it's good fortune is, not necessarily what most men are finding. They're probably hitting the wall and then finding that they don't have the answers.
Hmm.
So that's part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, and I know that's part of the reason more guys are coming through your door. And as dishonest as they want to be on that form, they are through your door. So maybe, maybe actually
But this is what I wonder, are they dishonest or is that what they think? Like that's
both,
okay.
both. One, I don't want to admit that that I don't have control.
Yeah.
I don't think any. It's like the old story when you and your husband are on a road trip and you tell him to get directions and he's like, "No, I
Yes.
know where I'm going." It's the game we're playing. It's the game we're playing.
There was something I was gonna ask. Oh, sauna. Do you have a sauna? Because you mentioned
I
cold
do.
plunge and some of the other things. Like, have you had better experiences with cold plunge than you did sauna?
No, I do
Or do you do
both.
both?
I do both, but, to be quite honest, I don't have time for both all the time, and the amount that I sweat I'm here in South Florida, the
Mhm.
amount I'm working outdoors and the amount I'm sweating on the mats, I prioritize the ice bath before my second training session a couple of times per week, and then 1 day of recovery, I'll do the sauna and ice,
Yeah.
and that's my non-negotiable.
Yep. So, have you walked your listeners through your daily routine? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I did a video recently, I've done deep dives on the blog, and it'll be a subject matter that we go into over and over and over and over and over
Good.
for sure.
Because I think that's what people, they love hearing what actually works, right? Like, this is how I do what I do with kids, with a family, with a job. Like, I get asked this all the time. Like, how do you have 3 children under 5 and scale a business and focus on your health? And it's like, it's not perfect, but these are the things that have worked for me. So you're such a great resource.
Yeah, non-negotiables, then the ideal, and then in a perfect world, and nobody's gonna have all of those all the time, but yeah, if we can lay out those blueprints a little bit here and there and let people find what works for them and what they can incorporate, I'm sure we're doing a service to the community, whether or not they ask us for it or not.
Do you do VO2 max testing and like targeted zone training or?
I did that so long ago when I was, I guess, getting into shape and I was going from a surf world to personal training with a boxing coach
Mhm.
and all of these other things. And the stress test on different machines lately, no, it's just to do jujitsu in one of the toughest gyms in South Florida, and that's plenty. It's plenty.
Yeah. Well, I was curious your thoughts because there's so much more talk about VO2 max being one of the best indicators of longevity, looking
Yeah.
at, the cardio and pulmonology systems working together. So I was curious if that was something that you.
Then there's grip strength. Then
Yep.
there's you know what? I'm a big breathwork advocate, and I think like breath holds are really important. Apnea holds are really important. Being able to control your breath, control your response to stress. That's part of the reason the ice bath and breathwork work so well when people do start implementing that. But for me personally, it's been a while since I've actually said, okay, this is one area I need to go focus on. And if there was an area, it would probably be getting actually stronger
Yep.
because I do so much training, technical training, that it takes a lot out of you and it's actually hard to go and put more resources into just putting on muscle. But
Mhm.
that's, if I'm focusing on anything, that's kind of what I'm focusing on.
Do you take any supplements or are you all through food?
Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm on the creatine, the glycine, the magnesium. First thing every day, I'm in electrolytes and water. Yeah, I've got the basics at least. And yeah, I'm not probably looking for anything else, but every now and then something piques my interest and I'll see a study and I'll be like, all right, I'm going to try that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
why not?
Those are the staples. Electrolytes, if there was one thing I could take on an island with me, I know I could probably just like grab a coconut from the tree on an island. Um, but electrolytes, I absolutely feel a difference on the days I take them and I don't. Like it's such a simple thing, but 60% of fatigue in the US is dehydration. Like we're just not drinking enough water and well balanced electrolytes.
I believe it was like 2 years ago, maybe even three now. I finally got through to my mom. I'm like, you don't need this, you don't need that, you just need a little electrolytes. And I started getting her the packets that I knew was clean, unflavored electrolytes. And she had a headache one day and she popped that. And 30 minutes later, her headache was gone. And she's like, oh, you're right.
There's
This is,
something to it.
yeah, this is pretty good.
I know. I'm with you.
All right. So awesome. I think your model is great. I think you're certainly entertaining enough of the population that you're doing a lot of good for a lot of different people. And the one thing I've been asking people when I close this is one word you'd like to leave the audience with, and then explain why.
Mm.
It's better when I put you on the spot, when I don't let you prepare with that one.
Well, I have like 2 words, but I'm just gonna keep it to what's in line, happiness. I think, my word at the end of all this is happiness, and the reason that's my word is if you are lacking happiness, you're gonna turn back and look at your life, and none of it's gonna have been worth it. If you have happiness, that is the emotion that fulfills us, connects us, encourages us. And my last thing, and I know I'm giving you a long explanation for this, but your brain and the way you talk to yourself is what's going to either propel you forward or hold you back. And so, happiness in our brain and like love for ourselves is going to make you a healthier version of you no matter what. So, happiness on so many levels, but happiness is the word I want to end on for those
That's
reasons.
awesome. I just did a post on self-talk because a buddy of mine, did some self degradating words and he was making a joke, but then I was like, it's funny, but it actually, let's kind of practice talking about ourselves positively and see what it does.
It is so fascinating because if you think about even in the entrepreneurial world, we can get told no and hold on to that no. And then that one no can take away all of our belief in ourselves of being able to accomplish something. But that no was 30 seconds of your entire day. If your brain kept telling you, yes, you can do it, yes, you can do it, yes, you can do it, that no is a drop in the hat and it doesn't even matter. It's so interesting the way humankind works that we dwell on the negative that takes up this much of our life when we can automatically just change our whole mindset and it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to
Yeah.
hold you back. So,
That was
yeah.
another way I was fortunate, I guess. I fell into an industry when I was very young that was predominantly 80%, 90% no's. And you get so used to the no's that you're like, all right, when one yes comes around, that's
Oh.
cool. It is what it is.
But I love it. You had to change, you had to have that mindset to be like a no is not a stop, right? Like
It's
no
a
doesn't mean yeah.
yeah, it's a reroute. It's a
Yes.
rewiring, yeah.
Yep. This one person told me when a door closes, she just found windows to go in. And I just like visualized that and I loved it so much. She's like, okay, the door closes and then here she is just breaking into windows and going in. Like, it doesn't stop me.
Yeah, the biology of belief, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need the route that I thought I needed. I just need to get there.
Yes.
So, okay, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where we can find you. I know it's Stat Wellness, and is there anywhere else you're pointing the listeners to?
Yeah. Well, if you want to follow me, I'm Kristin Oja, DNP, Doctor of Nursing Practice on social, and I'm kristinoja.com on my website. And then Stat Wellness is my company, and we have a spot there where it says virtual locations. So if you're listening from different states and you want to see us in your state, put your state on there because we're expanding nationwide and we're kind of mapping out our trajectory and where we're headed.
Very cool. What states are you in, real quick, before we go?
Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and then we are looking in Florida.
All right. So you are expanding south.
Yeah. Yeah, we will be. We will be. It's interesting because Georgia is where we started and Georgia's our easier market. So we like go out of state and then come back and then go out of state and then come back because we have brand awareness here in Georgia.
Well, Florida is definitely a growing market. So throw one into a hotspot, and then I'm sure you guys will catch on like wildfire.
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful, Josh.
Thanks for coming. You guys have a great day. Thanks for watching today's episode, and as always, go to Lineage Provisions for 15% off of the best protein from regenerative agriculture, and my personal favorite, Lineage Provisions. 15% off, code Josh Button. You guys enjoy. Have a great day.